Welcome to the Chasing Happy podcast. I'm Eliza Thomas, your host. On this series, we'll be talking to guests about how they chase happy, the barriers to this, and how we can all work together to create more happiness in Singapore for everyone. In today's episode, we are still on the theme of caregiving. Our special guest is Veena Nantakumar, the Outreach and Program Manager for Children and Youth at Caregivers Alliance Limited, or CAL. Veena shares several heartwarming stories to explain why CAL calls caregivers hidden heroes. Additionally, she delves into the extensive array of free programs and services that CAL offers to support caregivers. Veena also articulates her personal dream for the mental health sector in Singapore. Let's dive in. Hi Veena, welcome to the Chasing Happy podcast.
Thanks for having me, Eliza. It's good to be here today.
Okay, cool. All right. So could you tell us more about your professional background and your role at CAL?
Sure. So my name is Veena Nantakumar. I'm an Outreach and Program Manager with the Children and Youth Department in CAL. I helm that department. So basically what I do is I reach out to schools and institutes of higher learning at CAL and actually promote more about our programs and services as well that we have. So we have a Young Caregivers program as well as other programs that we deliver in CAL.
What about your professional background? Like how has your journey been professionally?
Sure. So professionally, I'm a trained counselor actually. So I've got my master's in counseling from Monash University. I've got a background in psychology as well, my bachelor's. And basically, I've been in this industry for about 15 or 16, going on 16 years now. I was working in the government service for about 10 years, working with offenders and so on. And then now I've been in the social service sector for 5 years, working with Caregivers Alliance Limited.
And I understand that you have had your own mental health journey. And according to your comfort level, could you please share about that along with the experiences with your caregivers?
So for me, I'm a person in recovery myself. So I was originally diagnosed with depression in 2013, but thereafter I actually found out I had bipolar condition a few years ago because sometimes there's a misdiagnosis between these two conditions. And since then, I met lovely people on my recovery journey that have supported me, including professionals like my therapist, my psychiatrist, and so on. So that's something that I've benefited a lot from. I've also attended the Peer Support Specialist program through NCSS, the National Council of Social Service, and I'm a trained peer support specialist as well. So from that, I've actually been supporting other persons in recovery in their recovery journeys as well, besides the caregivers who are my predominant clients nowadays as well, who I support. So I have a unique lens because I share with them a lot about what it's like for a person in recovery and that perspective. But at the same time, I also have the professional hat that I wear as a trained counselor. And I also share from my caregivers, my loved ones, my parents' background of what it was like to experience me when I was actually going through my mental health challenges. Yeah.
So it's actually like from 3 angles, right?
Yeah, from 3 angles pretty much. Yeah, so I do share a little bit about how that journey was a bit rocky at times, but how things got better when my parents were communicating more with me and empathizing and doing certain things which we teach in our caregiver to caregiver programs. So they went through the program, and that's actually how I found out about CAL in the first place. So that is quite a journey for me. It's come full circle in that way.
Okay, so you've been in this sector for a while. What are your thoughts on the caregiving landscape in Singapore?
So for the caregiving landscape, it's a very unique landscape in itself. I would say the mental health trajectory, because in CAL we focus in the mental health and caregiving area. So that trajectory is still very nascent, it's still very young in itself. So we are actually going through a similar trajectory of how persons with special needs were treated or persons with disabilities. So there's still a lot of stigma at times, there's still a lot of challenges for persons to really accept persons in recovery and so on. But I think there's growing acceptance, especially among young people that I work with a lot. And they are actually the hope for me when I work in the community sector. So that gives me a lot of hope that people are starting to accept and they're starting to embrace persons with mental health issues. And they themselves are also trying to understand more of what persons with mental health recovery go through. And they are also trying to understand what it's like for their own mental wellness. So I think that is a very encouraging thing that I'm seeing these days.
And what are the differences, do you think, because you were mentioning people with special needs, people who are with disabilities. What's the differences between caregiving for persons with mental health issues and other types of caregiving?
I think it's really quite different and it's quite unique for persons with mental health issues per se, whether it's diagnosed or not, because the thing is that it's a lot more emotional support that's required, a lot more caregiving from a stance of actually understanding what the person is going through, connecting with them with empathy, and also effectively communicating and advocating in that ways. Because persons with mental health issues, they may not have a lot of physical health issues at the same time, similar to persons with disabilities or with special needs that is more visible. But they need a lot of emotional support, they need a lot of psychological support and understanding, which a lot of caregivers can equip themselves with, and they can actually come to our programs and learn such skills.
And there's been a lot of emphasis on caregivers lately in the news and in national conversations. What are CAL's programs and services that is serving this growing need?
So CAL has been around for 12 years actually, and I think it's great that we have opportunity like this to also share about it, because I think not everyone really knows about us in the space at times. So we actually started off with our caregiver to caregiver program for persons with mental health issues. I know it's a big mouthful, it's C2C PMHI to be short. So that's a program which our caregivers go through. It's a 12-session program, so once a week for 12 weeks. And they actually cover different topics like learning from the conditions and learning about the brain, medication, as well as the soft skills such as communication, empathy, problem solving, and so on, and even self-care, which is so important for them. We also have an 8-week dementia program, which is once a week for 8 weeks. So that is something that is also very popular these days among caregivers, because we're living in an aging society. So that is something that a lot of our caregivers are also coming forward for. We also have the Young Caregivers program, which I mentioned. We started in 2020, same time as the dementia program. So that's more for peer caregiving or persons who are just interested in caregiving and mental health. So that is actually for those between the ages of 15 to 35 years old, right? And we do that predominantly with the institutes of higher learning and the schools and so on. And we also have a program for eating disorders, a caregiver to caregiver program for eating disorders, which we started in collaboration with KKH in 2021. So quite a number of programs, which I say has actually been broadened our reach to various caregivers of different issues. We even run one for caregivers of those with special needs, because that is a collaboration that we have with Minds as well, that we do about once or twice a year. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much for sharing. And I in fact have attended the C2C PMHI with you as my teacher.
Yeah.
And some of the things I learned was, like you said, managing mental health issues for people around me from a personal level, and also to how to work with mental health professionals, and finding out more about the community-based resources that are available. Mm-hmm. And also, I think one of the biggest things I learned was like the empathy skill, which is, that's something that a lot of us have, but to actually know the technical aspects of it, like how to mentalize or visualize what others are going through. So when I was, for example, going through having an argument with a loved one, my default mode usually would be to think, how does this affect me, and express how that affects me in my communication. But after going for the class, I practiced the empathy skill taught in class, and I even tried to figure out what was my loved one thinking and going through when she said those things. And I learned to affirm her feelings and experiences instead of focusing and talking about my own. And that really helped resolve the conflict and preserve the good state of the relationship. And the other big takeaway was, because I'm a person in recovery as well, so generally I took up the course because I want to help those around me, because I see myself as a secondary caregiver, because a lot of the times my illness has affected them in a negative way, but I wanted to see how I could communicate better and help them cope with their own stresses, not just me, but their own life stresses. And so I learned not to take for granted the suffering of my caregivers, and I tend to be very self-absorbed. But hearing how learning from all the other caregivers in the course, how they experience mental illness, it made me more humble and eager to cooperate and support my caregivers. And this will link back to my next question, which is, why does Cal call caregivers hidden heroes?
Firstly, I just want to affirm you. I'm just so glad that you've been practicing things so actively since we've been through the lessons and classes together. I think that question, it is a great question. We call our caregivers hidden heroes because we see them as being really selfless, being very sacrificial, and really putting their loved ones' needs first. So in a sense, they are heroes to us because we see what they do is particularly special and unique in that sense. And they are hidden because a lot of time, because of the stigma of mental health and the fear of what their loved ones may be thought of or said of by other people around them, they are hidden because they are actually hiding in the shadows, supporting their loved ones, backing them up, as you would know, like how your loved ones have done for you. So, that's why we see them as hidden heroes. But we really see our mission as really empowering them. Our vision is really to empower the hidden heroes. And so that's why they're at the forefront of everything that we do in Cal. A lot of caregivers, like one of the caregivers, even in our class, I think one thing I was always so motivated by her and encouraged by her is that, she said something like, caregivers, we go through many storms in life. And the loved one's journey sometimes being a bit rocky at times, and sometimes having to be hospitalized at times, or going through some setbacks. But she always said that even though that they are going through storms, there are also rainbows that they should look out for. So I always found that very uplifting and positive in that outlook that she had, that she was also looking out for the rainbows in her loved one's recovery. So she was holding the hope that her loved one will recover with time. It's just that she needs to be patient and understanding and supportive towards her loved one. Another story that I can bring up is how I had this caregiver family that actually came for the C2C program. So it was mom and dad and one of the younger brothers. And basically, three of them came together to support grandma who has depression and maybe going into a little bit of dementia as well, because she's already in her 80s. And I found that really super empowering because they were coming together to learn as a family and say that, it is not a stigma. There's nothing wrong in their family or with grandma. It's just something that she's going through. And they learn to better communicate with her and better understand what she's going through. So that is something that I found very super empowering in that sense. And it was something whereby they actually learned to also support one another. So the mom was the predominant main caregiver, and the dad and the son were like the backups or secondary caregiver like yourself. But they all decided to take turns and to support mom and each other in that brilliant way that they had. So it was like a tag team effort. So I thought that was a really great way that they were also wrapping around. And I have a lot more stories about even especially young caregivers that I work with. A lot of them have big hearts actually. So a lot of them, they come forward because they want to support their friends or even just people around them that they may know who are going through challenging times. So a lot of them, they come forward and say like, sometimes I'm also a person in recovery. They will say, or I've gone through my own mental health challenges. And they actually say that, hey, I want to support others. I want to advocate for others, like how I stood up for myself or others have stood up for me. So in that sense, there are a lot more stories and tales that I could regale you this entire time. But there are just so many hidden heroes out there. So it's very encouraging for us at Cal when we work with such individuals.
Sounds like very blessed, meaningful work. All right.
It is.
Okay, so for my final question is,
Yeah.
what's the dream or vision for the mental health sector or caregivers of persons with mental health issues in Singapore?
My personal dream is that in Cal, we have this thing called Cal for Mental Wellness campaign. We've been running it for the last few years, I think for the last 2 to 3 years. And we really envision this to be on a national level. And we have been doing this to actually create more awareness about mental health and caregiving, the importance of caregivers and their roles. So I would love to see this at a national level. So similar to what, they do for other sort of groups and so on, like, like the Purple Parade and all these other sort of things. I hope the Cal for Mental Wellness campaign will be a nationally recognized campaign. And this is something that more people will advocate for, and for caregivers especially, because caregivers are truly wonderful people and they have big hearts. And I think more of them need to be recognized and supported. Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit more about this campaign? Like what does it entail?
So this Cal for Mental Wellness campaign, we've been running it the last few years for like a month or 6 week period at every point of time. And usually I think next year is going to be around the April to June period, like the second quarter, early second quarter. And what we do is that we actually get people to start their own sub-campaigns as well. So they can help us to create more awareness about mental health and caregiving by doing different activities, right? So if you love Zumba, for example, you could Zumba for mental wellness. Or, if you love to write, or you like to walk, or you like to do anything that is a movement, or anything that can contribute, like even some people were doing baking for mental wellness, or they were doing like sleeping well for mental wellness, and things like different activities that you can be participating in and be part of. And then you can actually spread the awareness through your own circles of influence that way. And you could also help us to fundraise money, because in Cal, a lot of our programs, pretty much all our programs that I mentioned, are actually complementary, because we don't want to add the additional strain on caregivers. So actually by fundraising, it actually goes a long way in paying it forward and helping other caregivers to actually receive these programs in kind.
Okay, sounds amazing and great. I hope that really takes off and does achieves that national status that you want. So okay, before we wrap up, I'd like to ask this question to my guest. What is something that that helps you stay uplifted and motivated, or is there a practice or a song or something you do that really keeps you going and afloat in your life?
I would say it's a combination of things for me. I love music, so a lot of music also motivates me. A song that I particularly like, which always uplifts me, is I Am Light by India Ari. So the meanings, the lyrics of that song is very uplifting. It's saying that, we're more than our wounds, we're more than our brokenness, and so on. And I love watching movies. I love, connecting with friends, having brunch, doing things that other people do as well. So I would say it's a combination of things, but music is a particularly big influence in my life.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for sharing, Veena, and thank you for being on the show, for sharing so vulnerably, for sharing with our listeners everything that Cal is doing to help the mental health sector in Singapore. And I wish you and Cal the very best. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
You're welcome. Take care. Thank you, Veena, for being on the Chasing Happy podcast. If you or your loved one is in need of greater support, please check out CAL or Caregivers Alliance Limited's website, www.cal.org.sg. Together in community, we can feel lighter of our burdens. That's all from me for now, and that's a wrap for Season 1 of the Chasing Happy podcast. Thank you for listening. We hope to bring you more episodes in time to come. The Chasing Happy team is Elijah Thomas, me, and Zubin Muhammad Nizar. Thank you for listening, and again, here's my personal prescription for finding happiness. Love always, laugh always, and if you can't do that for yourself, find those who do. Until next time, take care and be gentle on yourself.